If you already have information stored in a file such as an Excel workbook, you don't need to retype it to get it into Access. You can use the tools available on the External Data tab in the Import and Link group. You'll notice that we have lots of different file types that we can bring into Access. We can bring in Excel files or tables from other Access databases. We can bring in text files, which would include comma-delimited .csv files. We could choose XML, and we have additional options here under the More button. Let's bring in an Excel file to replace the customers table that we began to create in the prior movies in this chapter. The file we're bringing in has additional fields that we didn't create in the original, such as fields for the address. Instead of creating those fields manually and then importing the data, we can create the entire structure and import the data in one step. I'll right-click on the customers table and choose Delete from the pop-up menu. Access will ask me to confirm that I want to delete this table, and I do, so I'll press Yes. Now we're going to bring in the Excel file to replace it. Back on the External Data tab in the Import and Link section, I'm going to press the Excel button here. Make sure you're pressing the Excel button on the left half of your screen, not the Excel button that's in the Export group. We want to bring data in, so stay over here on the left. Press the Excel button, and the Get External Data Excel Spreadsheet wizard starts. First, we need to tell it which file we want to bring in. I'm going to press this Browse button, and in the Exercise folder, in the Chapter 2 folder, we'll find the Customers Excel file. I'll press Open. Now we get to choose what do we want to do with that file. We have three options. We can either import the source data into a new table in the current database. We can append the copy of the records into a table if we already have one existing. Or we can link to the data source by creating a linked table. If we create this as a linked table, Access will be able to use the data that's inside of the Excel file, but it won't actually live inside of our database. If any changes occur to the Excel file, then those changes will be reflected inside of Access. However, if that file gets deleted or moved, then Access will lose track of it, so we won't be able to find it. We want to bring the data actually and manage it inside of Access. So we're going to stick with this first option, import the source data into a new table in the current database. Go ahead and say OK, and the next step of the wizard starts. This top window is asking us which pieces of that Excel workbook we want to bring in. We can either bring in different worksheets, or if we have named ranges, we can bring those in. I'm going to stick to Show Worksheets and choose the only worksheet that's in that file, the Customers worksheet. It gives us a preview of what that data looks like down below. Go ahead and press Next. Now we get to tell Access that the first row contains column headings. These are the field names across the top in the first row on the Excel file. I'll turn the checkbox on, and the table updates to show that these are headers and not data. Go ahead and say Next. Now we can go through and choose the data type for each field. Access is pretty good about selecting the correct data type by the data that's already present, but we can click through to double check. This first one, the ID field, is a double-digit data type. The next couple are all short text, and I can scroll over to see additional data that's coming in from the Excel file. This state, short text, and the zip code, that's also a short text. We can also choose if we have fields that we don't want to import. You can turn on the checkbox to not import those and skip it. We can also rename them if we'd like. I'm going to accept the names that came from the Excel file, and I'm not going to skip anything. Go ahead and say Next. Now we get to choose how we want to add our primary key. We can let Access add a new column that's the primary key, or we can choose an existing key if the one's already there. I'm going to choose my own primary key and tell it to use the ID field. There. Go ahead and say Next again. And finally, we get to name our table. Access is bringing in the name of the original Excel file. That's how it's knowing this is Customers. So that's great. That works for us. Go ahead and say Finish. And Access brings that data into our tables. We go ahead and close this. I do not need to save the import steps. And we've got our new table that showed up here in the navigation pane. If I double click on it, we'll see the results. So there's all of our fields. We've got, and if I look at the bottom here, 200 total customers that we just imported. We also imported the structure of this table, including what we had created originally manually, the first name, last name, and phone fields, but also we have the street, city, state, and zip code fields as well. If you already have data set up in Excel, the import tool makes it really easy to not only bring in that data, but also quickly create the entire structure of the table. Just choose the type of file you want to bring in and let the wizard walk you through the options. At the end of the process, you'll have your table set up and ready to go. And if you already have the table structure set up with some data in it inside of Access already, you can use the Append option in the wizard to add data to an existing table.